to reduce climate change, and we will. 40%, the majority, think we can, we have the technology, and we might. Quite optimistic about technology, not quite so optimistic about humanity, and whether we've got the mindset. But overall, that's a very significant portion of the world population who feels the same way as the climate scientists. And in fact, they're very strongly represented in the global south. In China, in Mexico, in South Africa, in Sweden. These are some of the most optimistic places in terms of believing that we can reduce climate change. But 20% of people are pessimists. They believe that we have the technology, we could reduce climate change, but we won't, because people are crap. These are, should we say, techno-realists, humanity pessimists. I know quite a few of those. My dad is one of them. And so far, this is what I was expecting to see. I was expecting to see a majority, sort of optimistic, but a strong sense of people not being so sure whether we've got what it takes. What shocked me was the percentage of people who are fatalists. 14% of people around the world believe this is it. We can no longer reduce climate change. Now, those fatalists, that fatalistic belief that we can't do anything about it, is called a negative performance belief. The psychologists actually have a word for it. It's actually quite a dangerous emotion, it's quite a dangerous mindset to have. Because if you think we can't do anything, then you don't do anything. This is the kind of belief that prevents any action from taking place. It also is the kind of belief that can lead to antisocial behaviour and very negative mental health outcomes. Believing there is no future, that this big monster is coming to get us, is very unhealthy for your well-being. And notice I don't put realists on there. These are emotional states. You can be an optimist realist. You can be a pessimist realist. This isn't about realism, this is about attitude towards what we're facing. And when we looked into that fatalism a little bit more, it got slightly more worrying. 16% of 50 to 64-year-olds agreed that it's too late to stop climate change. 18% of 35 to 49-year-olds and 22% of the under 35s. The people who think we have no future are the people who have more of it than anybody else. And of course it's our young who think that we can't solve climate change. They've been listening to this since they were children. We've told them the scary story of the monster that's coming to eat their future their whole lives. Now these aren't the young people who come and work for Futera. The young people who come to work for Futera are passionate change makers. They are the strong optimists who believe we can do something. These young people are the silent. They're not on social media talking about fatalism. They just don't care. They've given up. There is no future. And what do you think that's doing to their behaviours and to their beliefs and to their mental health? In some countries, this statistic is even higher. In the United States, it's up at 30%. 30% of young people believing that we can no longer take action on climate change. And of course, when we ask people, do you hear more about the negative impacts of climate change, or do you hear more about progress and solutions? Of course, people are hearing more about the problem than about the solution. You are all going to die is much more the message that we hear. It's the more interesting message for the media than, hey, look at this really cool thing you can do with food or with technology or in your life or in your home. The scary story sells, the solution story not so much. So, As Solitaire, we decided to start a campaign on this, the Climate Optimist campaign. It was launched in New York last year. Just trying to get out there that message that solving climate change must start with the belief that we can. If we don't believe our actions are going to make any difference, we're not going to take them. We made some kooky messaging. We brought in some real strong proof points around concrete that's being made by drawn down carbon, about the fact that we can reuse coffee grounds for fuel, the fact that solar has become price parity with fossil fuels. It's been a really successful campaign. We've managed to engage a lot of young people around the world. But what they all asked was, well, what can I do? With these messages, you're telling me what's going on in the outside world, but what can I do? And this is where things get interesting. Because if you think about the feedback loop between what I was saying around positivity and action, something interesting happens. And this is my book, The Happy Hero. In fact, most of this is in The Happy Hero. In The Happy Hero, I talk about the fact that as individuals, we deserve to feel happy and positive and optimistic about the future. Being positive and optimistic is good for you. People who are positive and optimistic about the future are more likely to live longer, are less likely to get ill, have more and wider groups of friends, and have a better sex life. That's not personal anecdote, that's the scientific research. Being positive and optimistic about the future is good for you as an individual. In fact, it's very bad for you to be the opposite. But we also need to take action. This is where the heroism piece comes in. To take action in your own personal life makes a real difference, and it also creates a feedback loop with your positivity. The more positive you are, the more likely you are to take action. The more you take action, the more positive you're likely to be. So those two sides, that necessity, as that I explained at the crossroads, that absolute necessity in the crisis curve for us to be looking upwards and thinking about how the world's going to get better, and the fact we actually have to do something as individuals. Now, sometimes people question whether doing something is going to make any difference. So I did a bit of research on the UK. I looked at one average day in the UK, and what the average food shopping, car buying, and holiday booking was for that average day. And we did the calculations of if somehow everybody in the UK became Swedish for a day and did all those good things, what would the impact be? And in just one day of the British people changing their behaviour, not doing anything they would do otherwise, not buying more cars or less cars, just the average number of purchases that were made in one day. If they changed to greener purchases, we could turn a coal power station off for a year. We talk a lot about people power, powerful people. We need to talk more about people power. That's the kind of people power impact that we can have through our own personal behaviours. Now, Johan Rockström spoke a lot about the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, this incredible to-do list for the planet that has been developed through intense negotiations over a period of time with all the countries in the world. I rewrote them for fun in May of this year, because that's the kind of thing I do for fun. I rewrote them for fun, for myself, to think about what are the actions that I could do. I'm a woman, I live in London. What are the kind of actions that I could do in order to help take action on the Sustainable Development Goals? Number one in the Sustainable Development Goals is end poverty. Well, I could buy fair trade. I could use more green energy. I could move and smile more. I could treat everyone equally. I could buy better stuff. Now, in May of this year, I wrote these, and one of my wonderful Futerran colleagues designed them up, and we put them on social media, and they got shared thousands and thousands of times. Hundreds of thousands of people got engaged. And when we published these for fun, two things happened. One half of the United Nations contacted us to say, excuse me, but you've completely infringed the copyright of the UN, could you stop? That wasn't the exact words they used. Rightly so. Another part of the UN 10-year framework for sustainable production and consumption, which is the 10YFP, which actually is run by the Swedish government and the Japanese government in partnership, came to us and said, let's do this for real. Let's not do this for one woman, a high consumer sitting in London. Let's think about, are there ways that every single human being on this planet, 7.5 billion people, could contribute to making SDGs a reality? Because bluntly, without 7.5 billion people contributing to making these SDGs a reality, what do we think is going to happen? Do we think that governments and businesses are going to be the ones who affect change, rather than individuals? And so, between May and just a few weeks ago, Futerra, the One Planet, that's the 10YFP, SCI here in Stockholm, IGES in Japan, UN Environment, WBCSD, UNESCO, etc. gathered together, we pulled in a whole set of experts in order to set good life goals. A set of actions that if we as individuals take them, will measurably contribute to fulfilling SDGs. And because they're the international language, we created a set of 17 emojis to go with them. Basically, anyone under about 15 only communicates in emojis anyway, so we thought that's where we'd start. These 17 emojis each come with a set of specific asks underneath each one, that some of which are only available to those of us who are over-consumers, but some of which are available to everybody. I'm not going to go through all 17, you'll be pleased to know. I'm just going to flick through to reflect on a couple of them. So, for example, we're speaking a lot today about eat better. And there's been a huge amount of work done on the transformational impact that our diets can have on our own health, on how other people are treated in supply chains, and on the world around us. Every single time you eat something, you get a chance to make a difference in the world. It's actually really kind of cool when you think about that. Every single time you choose to eat something, you're affecting the world around you. And so, very simply, learn how we farm, fish, and make our food. Enjoy more fruits and vegetables. Buy local, seasonal, and fairly traded food. Help children, elderly people, and pregnant women to eat well, and demand an end to global hunger. Each one of these is linked back to one of the measurable targets within the SDGs themselves. Because the SDGs are not just the headlines, there's hard, measurable 2030 targets underneath each one, and so these are linked back through to them. You'll notice later on we do talk about eating less meat. In this one we talked about enjoying more fruit and vegetables. Flicking onwards. One of my favourite ones, and one of the ones which has been responded to best around the world, is in Learn and Teach. Number 2, teach kids kindness. How many of the problems in our world would be solved if actually we taught our kids kindness a little bit better? Support teachers and keep schools open. We'll keep going. I wanted to stop on a few of the climate ones. So, use clean energy. This is one of my favourite emojis, by the way. I like this guy. Save energy wherever you can. Buy from companies powered by renewable energy. Demand clean, affordable energy for everyone. You'll notice that these follow a similar structure. The first one is always, I learn, because actually educating ourselves, finding out about the world, discovering what the real situation is important. And the final one is always a demand, an ask. of powerful people. We don't have the word vote in there because we quite like the idea of these being used in China, but we do have the word demand. And the ones in the middle are of increasing difficulty or of increasing wealth required to do so. It's very important to us in developing these that there is at least some of the asks that are available to people who are on low incomes, whether they're in high or low income countries, but also without removing the added responsibility for those of us on higher incomes to take action with the lifestyles that we've been gifted. I'm just going to flick on through a few of them and just be amused at the wonderful creativity of the emojis. They all animate as well, although a few of them are a bit scary. Live better. Simple things, well, forthright things. Reuse, repair, recycle, share and borrow. Harder things. Collect friends and experiences, not just things. Oh, I want to skip the important one. Act on climate. This is, of the Good Life Goals, the one about which there was probably the most controversy, the most challenging conversations within our UN partners, which I find extraordinary. Because in the most recent IPCC report, it was the first time the IPCC actually included asks for us as individuals. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but the IPCC has actually called on all of us to now take action on climate change. And this is a fundamental difference for how the IPCC has been working up until now, where it's been focusing only on policymakers and decision makers. Now it's focusing on all of us as decision makers. And the 5 asks within the Good Life Goals are exactly matched to what the IPCC is calling for. Learn about climate solutions, not learn about climate change. Learn about climate solutions. This is what we should be focusing our energy on. I trust the scientists to track the causes and impacts of climate change in their detail. There's not very much I've got to give to the science on climate change. There's a lot that my actions and my behaviours can contribute to the solution. Call for more renewable energy in your country, eat more plants and cut down on meat, which sounds a little bit sharp, although actually there's incredible photographs that we saw before I came on. I almost sort of want those in the background for that question. Walk and cycle rather than drive, and demand leaders take bold climate action today. I'm just going to keep flicking through. That's my favourite one. Love that guy. And then the final one. And I think this is a really important point when I'm sitting here addressing members of a cooperative. I've spoken about how culture changes overall and about individual action. The crisis curve that whole societies can go through and that a single individual can do. But of course there's something between whole societies and single individuals, and that's communities. Those of us that choose to come together, that might be sitting here tonight next to people who are strangers, except that they're not. When you look around this room, the people in this room hold enough similar values with you that they want to be a member, that they want to be cooperative. And I think that level, that space between how our whole cultures, how our human species operates, and how we as atomized single people are going to take action, that's the exciting space. The space where small and large groups, families, friends, membership organisations, clubs are going to come together and make change. And that might not be what we see reflected in our newspapers. That might not be grand enough or big enough to be spoken about on stages at the United Nations. But that's where real change becomes possible, where we support each other to make those choices, where we decide to back something like the co-op in moving towards more plant-based and away from meat diets, where we help each other out to make the transitions that otherwise might be a bit difficult to do as a single person. So make tomorrow better than today is the final good life goal. Make tomorrow better than today. Not save tomorrow from being an absolute fucking disaster. But make tomorrow actually better. Because I don't know about you, but when I look at the children in my family, I don't just want sustainable for them. I actually want better. I want them to have more, not necessarily more things, but more excitement, more hope, more education, more interest, more love. I don't want them to fight and solve my problems. I want to gift them something better than I got, and that is still possible. And we have to hold on to that belief that as individuals, as communities like the community that I see in here, and as the entire planet, we actually have the potential to change the course of that crisis curve. Those of us who are privileged enough to be here and be adults standing at that crossroads, adults able to make the difference that we can in our lives. Absolute privilege to be there, able to make those choices. I just want to show a very quick film just to articulate that better than me with a cold ever could. This would be really dramatic if it started.